Hi, this is revolves here and welcome to another video. First of all, I want to thank my new subscribers because I've gone from 8 to like 35 in just 1 week time, and that's pretty awesome. So thank you. Now, without further ado, let's begin the subject. So, with this video, I just want to make clear that I don't want to put myself out there as a pessimist, but neither as an optimist. I am all about neutrality. So you can call me a neutralist if you will, even though neutrality is also counterintuitive for what it really means. So now let me explain what I mean by neutrality. Even though that word doesn't seem to require much explanation, it has built up a lot of significance to me, to the point that it really does need to be thoroughly explained, I think. Okay, so neutrality for me has no different meaning than the concepts of balance, stability, but also depth, non-duality, non-existence, nothingness, absolute infinity, the ground state of being, enlightenment, and the nature of existence. They all basically have the same meaning to me. So, we were all born out of neutrality, and we will die into neutrality. And in between, we are exposed to something which is everything but neutral. Everything in life is active. Even on the smallest scales where we can't mention it, it's still pretty active. So even when it seems if something is in a state of rest, still it isn't completely at rest. The matter out of which that something is made out of, so all the subatomic particles and such, that is still being active, holding that something together. So if the subatomic particles would also stop being active and come at total rest, that something would physically cease to exist. It would literally disappear into nothingness. And that right there is absolute neutrality. Okay, so why would it cease to exist? Because anything that we can observe or measure within reality has a certain amount of momentum to it. Anything that exists will always be active to a certain degree. That's the basic law of existence. In order for something to exist, it must be an active substance. If it isn't active, it's dead and therefore does not exist. But as scientists have pointed out, it seems to be impossible on the smallest scale of reality to attain a total state of rest, even when isolated in a total vacuum. Even the vacuum itself is an active quantum mechanical phenomenon. So it seems as though that absolute neutrality is physically impossible. And actually, this makes sense because when we think about nothingness or non-existence, it becomes pretty obvious that we're talking about something that doesn't exist. And something that doesn't exist is itself impossible. A thing that doesn't exist is not a thing. We're talking about the impossibility for a thing to exist. So it's not a thing and it is impossible. Therefore, non-existence or nothingness is not a thing and it is actually impossible. Conclusion: nothingness is impossible. So there must always be something. So maybe we are trapped in an infinite continuity of forced existence and re-existing. Nevertheless, here is the absurdity of it all. As we observe the way everything in reality is physically moving and behaving, most things are following a path towards least resistance into a lower state of energy or activity. At least everything which isn't alive. And I think that we can presume that its ultimate intention is to finally arrive at a state of zero energy. Now this to me indicates that there is a universal tendency to undo itself from what it is doing, namely being active. The universe seems to pursue the opposite of what it is. So it is pursuing nothingness. But since nothingness is physically impossible, it's trapped forever. It's just funny how absurd and counterintuitive it all is. Over the years, I've been studying a lot about enlightenment, the nature of reality, and what existence fundamentally is, and I always end up with these typical self-referential paradoxes. For example, when we think about reality, our thinking is directly pointing to the reality that exists independently from our thinking. And so basically, we're trying to make objective statements through the mechanism of thinking about something that lies outside of thinking. Now that right there is a huge paradox. And the only way to solve those paradoxes is not by use of more thinking, but by letting the thinking mechanism go. You have to do the opposite in order to achieve the supreme knowledge of the truth that you want. The universe is doing the exact same thing. It is doing exactly the opposite of what it is forced to do, namely being active. You have to recognize what the physical universe is pursuing so that you can apply that to your mental pursuit. And when you start to intentionally withdraw yourself from your compulsive thinking activity, and you practice this long enough, not only will your understanding about absolute neutrality grow, you will literally become neutral yourself. And this is what many people would call enlightenment. In this neutral state, everything will cease to exist, because within neutrality, you are perfectly balanced between everything. Balanced between life and death, between love and hate, between good and bad, between inside and outside, between real and unreal, between light and dark, between internal and external, and any other distinctions that the thinking mechanism can think of. And of course, it's also balanced between balance and imbalance to make it absolutely balanced. And that's the ultimate existential, universal, absolute, objective pursuit of everything to become a neutral. And everything in the universe is literally revolving around this neutral. That is why galaxies are literally spinning in a spiral form around their own nucleus, which is a black hole in most cases. That is why planets revolve around stars. That is why economies and governments revolve around dense cities. That is why sex revolves around the orgasm. That is why desires revolve around satisfactions. That is why we have to work and perform activity in order to have comfortable experiences. That is why we always chase something, so that something can undo us from our desiring state and become balanced and content. You see, every action revolves around something that will undo that action. If you're hungry, you will start eating, and that will be your action until your hunger is completely satisfied. Then your action will dissolve. The body doesn't want to be hungry, otherwise you will suffer. Also, the body doesn't want too much food in it, otherwise it will also suffer. So it wants something in between, something balanced. And each time you're out of that balance, you will have to perform an action to balance your body again. But can your body be perfectly balanced? Maybe one more cookie will balance my body, or maybe one more orange juice will balance it. The answer is no. It will revolve around the perfect balance more and more precisely but it will never be perfectly balanced. So again, everything revolves around a neutral, and each time anything is not balanced, it will actively chase that balance, and apparently nothing in the universe is perfectly balanced. And that's correct. Only nothingness, death, or non-existence is perfectly balanced. And all of existence will continue to revolve around the neutral for infinity. Now remember what I've said about nothingness. Nothingness doesn't exist and is therefore impossible. So here is another mindfuck for you. The universe or existence literally, physically, and mentally revolves around the impossible. And this is not some metaphysical, spiritual, or mystical woo-woo stuff. This is fucking real. It's so impossible that the impossible also is impossible. Hey, but wait, that's a double negative. No. It's neither possible nor impossible. That's how impossible it is. I can't use any term to describe this. Even neutrality is a wrong term because this thing is neither neutral nor unneutral. This thing is neither a thing nor nothing. It's neither describable nor indescribable. It's neither true nor untrue. It's neither balanced nor unbalanced. Do you start to understand it by now? All of existence revolves around something which is neither a something nor a nothing. And that's precisely the opposite of how we describe reality in terms of something and anything beyond it as nothing. But the actual reality is only interested in neither something nor nothing, because the real reality is not made out of thoughts, okay? Thoughts are the exact opposite of what reality really is. Reality itself is thoughtless. Even your own thoughts in and of themselves, as physical neuron activity, are also thoughtless. Okay? So now that we know that, start focusing on reality from a thoughtless perspective, and you might get access to total neutrality.